This lesson, we're going to look at the area of quadrilaterals. So if you remember from the last lesson, quadrilaterals are any shape that have four sides and four angles. The only shape that we're not going to look at in this lesson that is a quadrilateral is a trapezoid. So we're going to do a different lesson for area of trapezoids. And that's because the formula for trapezoids is a little bit more complicated than the ones that we're going to work with today. So we're going to do trapezoids in its own separate lesson. So your goal for this lesson is I can determine the area of rectangles, parallelograms, and squares. So for this lesson, we're going to jump back and forth between the area formula sheet and your notes, so have both of those handy. We're going to start off with your notes though. So to start off with, we're going to look at some definitions. So we're going to look at the definition of area. So area is the amount of space inside of a two-dimensional object. And so area, if you're looking at this square, is everything that is the green. Okay, it's everything inside of that square. All right. Next, we're going to look at something called the base. So the base is any side of a quadrilateral. So it could be the top, it could be the bottom, it could be the right-hand side, or it could be the left-hand side. The next thing that we look at is the height. So the height is the distance from one side to its opposite side. Now, the most obvious way that we look at height is from top to bottom, but when a shape is flipped over on its side, the height could technically be from one side to the other, and so we need to definitely keep that in mind as well. And then last but not least is perimeter, and that's something we're more familiar with because we've worked with it throughout the year. And so perimeter is the sum of the sides of the shape. And so if we have a square here, this is x, 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 and x, and so if we add all those x's together, we would have 4x. We're going to be mainly working with whole numbers, not whole numbers, with numbers, not with variables, throughout the geometry unit, and so we're not going to be working with a ton of variables, and so you'll see numbers there instead of letters. All right, let's flip over to your formula sheet here. So your first one is area of a triangle, a rectangle. And so I want you to draw this rectangle here. Make sure that you pay special attention to drawing the right angles. Also, make sure that you draw and write the word height and base because that's very important. And then make sure that you write the formula here. The formula is A equals B times H, and that stands for area equals base times height. And remember that you can pause this video, and you'll have to pause it frequently if you're taking notes from it, because we're going to go a little faster in the video than we do during class. So make sure that you pause if you need to take time to draw the picture and write it down. So over here in the last column, we have an example of a rectangle. It's labeled 4 inches in height and 7 inches on the base. So we're going to go ahead and label that. So 4 inches in height, 7 inches on the base. And we're going to use the formula. So area equals base times height. And we always start by writing the formula. It's very important. So area equals, so the base is 7 inches. Times the height, which is 4 inches. And so 7 times 4 is 28. So area equals 28. Except that whenever I write my answer in geometry, I always need to have my units. And so my units are inches squared. And I'll tell you why. Because 4 times 7 was 28. And inches times inches are inches to the second power. All right, let's look at our next one. Area of a parallelogram. So again, you're going to want to draw this shape. Label the height and the base. Now with this parallelogram, what you're going to notice is that the height is very specific. So the height is not this slanted piece of the side of the shape. The height is actually from the tallest point down to the lowest point. And you can think about it another way too. When you go to the doctor and they measure your height, you're not slanted over, you're not hunched over, you're standing up straight. And a parallelogram, the sides of the parallelogram are slanted, and so that's not the height that we want to measure. We want to measure it from its highest point to its lowest point. And so what we do is we go inside the shape to measure the height of the parallelogram. And this example over here on the right-hand column is maybe a clearer example of that, and so you can use that to look at. But we're going to do a lot of practice with parallelograms too. The other thing you'll notice is that the formula for a parallelogram is the same as a rectangle. Area equals base times height, and so that'll be easy to remember. As we come over here for our example, you'll see that the base is 9 centimeters. And again, you can see that the height, we're not measuring the slanted part outside. We're measuring from the highest point to the lowest point inside. And that's going to give us the true height. So our height here is 5 centimeters, and our base is 9 centimeters. And so let's go ahead and calculate the area to that. So I always start off by writing my formula, area equals base times height. So area equals, my base is 9, and my height is 5. 9 times 5 is 45. But my answer is 45 centimeters squared, or centimeters to the second power, because it's 5 times 9 is 45, and centimeters times centimeters is centimeters to the second power. All right. Last one on our formula sheet for today is a square. So again, make sure that all of your sides are congruent, meaning the same length as you draw the square. And then make sure you draw your right angles, because that's something that's very important, an important characteristic in a square. Label the base and the height. And again, you'll notice with the formula, it's the same formula. Area equals base times height. As we go over here to the example, you'll notice that I only labeled one side of the square, and that's because that's all that's needed, because all the sides of the square are the same. So you only need that one piece of information in order to solve the problem. So our height here is 8 yards, but you also know that that's our base, 8 yards, because all of the sides of the square are the same. So let's calculate our area. Area equals base times height. Area equals 8 times 8. Area equals 64. But my complete answer is 64 yards to the second power, because yards times yards is yards to the second power, or yards squared. All right, so let's move on to some actual examples here. So example 1, here we have a square, and you know it's a square because of these tick marks here. They show that all 4 sides are the same. So the height is 13 meters, and so we know our base is also 13 meters. And so our formula, which we always write, is area equals base times height. So area equals 13 times 13, which gives us area equals 169. And when we write our final answer, it's 169 meters squared. But now I also want the perimeter. And remember, the perimeter is adding up all of the sides on the outside. So if this is 13 meters, this is also 13 meters, this is 13 meters, and this is 13 meters. So 13 plus 13 plus 13 plus 13, that is going to be 52 meters. Perimeter is not squared. It's just meters. Let's take a look at this rectangle here. So our height is 21.7 kilometers. Our base is 15 kilometers. Let's use our formula to find the area. Area equals base times height. Area equals, our base is 15, and our height is 21.7. When we multiply those together, we're going to get 325.5. So my final answer is 325.5 kilometers squared. Now, for my perimeter, it's not a square, so all the sides are not the same. If this is 15 kilometers, then this is also 15 kilometers. If this is 21.7 kilometers, this is 21.7 kilometers. So when I go to add up my perimeter, I need to do 15 plus 15 plus 21.7 plus 21.7. And when I do that, I'm going to get 73.4 kilometers. And remember, perimeter is not squared. The only thing that's going to be squared is the area. Okay, So, example number 3, here we have a parallelogram. Remember, parallelograms can be a little confusing, all right? So let's take this a little slow. So first, what is our height? Remember that our height is not slanted with parallelograms. The height is from the tallest point to the lowest point, and it's going to be inside the parallelogram. And that's going to be this 1.6 right here. From the tallest point to the lowest point. It's not slanted, it's straight. Okay? Now our base. Our base is going to be 2.5 inches. So let's start there and calculate the area. Area equals base times height. Our base is 2.5 and our height is 1.6. And that's going to give us 4. So that's going to be 4 inches squared. Now, how do we calculate our perimeter? Remember what the definition of perimeter is. It's adding up all of the outside. So, if this is 2.5, then this is also 2.5. But, what's the outside of the shape? Is this 1.6 part of the outside of the shape? It's not, so we do not use it for the perimeter. This 1.8 is part of the outside of the shape, so we use that to calculate the perimeter. So this is 1.8, this is also 1.8. So when we go to calculate the perimeter, it's 2.5 plus 2.5 plus 1.8 plus 1.8. And that would give us 8.6 inches. All right, example number 4. We're going to go ahead and graph these on a coordinate plane, and then we're going to see the shape that it gives us. So we have 1, 7, so we go over 1, up 7, and we're going to label that E. Then we have 3, 7, over 3, up 7, we're going to label that F. We have 3, 4, over 3, up 4, we're going to label that G, and then 1, 4, 1, over 4, label that H, and then we're going to go ahead and connect. Okay, so think back to when we did the distance between points, okay? So let's first calculate our height. What is the height of this shape? 1, 2, 3. 3 units. What is the base of this shape? 1, 2. 2 units. Now, if it's 3 in the height, 2 on the base, it is a rectangle. If it was 3 and 3, then it would be a square. Okay? So let's calculate the area. Area equals base times height. Area equals, the base is 2, the height is 3, area equals 6. So the answer is 6 units squared. But what's the perimeter? Well, if this is 2, this is 2. If this is 3, this is 3. So the perimeter is going to equal 3 plus 3 plus 2 plus 2. And when we add all of those together, we're going to get 10 units. All right, you go ahead and try this one. Right, go ahead and hit pause if you're not done. If you are done, go ahead and check your answers. So the height is 17 meters and the base is 17 meters, and that's because it's a square. The area is 289 meters squared and the perimeter is 68 meters. Let's move on to the second one. Go ahead and hit pause if you're not done, and if you are done, let's take a look. So our height is 26 kilometers, our base is 11 kilometers. When we multiply those together, we get 286 kilometers squared, and then our perimeter is 11 plus 11 plus 26 plus 26, which is 74 kilometers. All right, let's try the next one. Make sure you're careful with this parallelogram. All right, go ahead and hit pause if you're not done, and if you are done, let's go ahead and take a look. So our height is 13 inches. Remember, height is not slanted. It's from the tallest point to the lowest point, and it's straight. The base is 29 inches. Multiply those two together, you get 377 inches to the second power, and our perimeter is the outside, so we get rid of that 13 when we do the perimeter. The perimeter is 29 plus 21 plus 29 plus 21, which gives you 100 inches. All right, last you try. All right, hit pause if you're not done. So our height here is 7 units. It's a rectangle, and the base is 4 units. So 7 times 4 would give us 28 units to the second power, and then our perimeter is 7 plus 7 plus 4 plus 4, which would be 22 units. Okay, so let's move on to some other stuff here. So in example 5, here we have a square, and I'm actually going to give you the area of the square. So if the area of a square is 36 inches squared, what is the length of each side? So if I know that I have a square, I know that all my sides are the same. I know that my formula is area equals base times height, and if my area is 36, I just need to find my base and my height. But if I have a square, my base and my height have to be the exact same number. So what number times itself would give me 36? And in that case, it would be 6, because 6 times 6 is 36. So each side here is 6 inches. So if this was 6 inches and this was 6 inches, that would mean area equals base times height, base and height, area equals 6 times 6, area equals 36, which would match this right here. So then, what would be the perimeter of this shape? Well, if each side is 6 inches, 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6 is 24 inches. That's a little confusing, so I'm going to do another example. So again, same thing. I'm going to give you the area of the square, and I'm going to tell you that it is 81 meters squared, okay? It's a square, so all of the sides are the same, all right? So we have the formula area equals base times height, but I'm giving you the area, so you're going to have to tell me the base and the height. But I know it's a square, so I know that the sides are exactly the same. So what number times itself would give me 81? Well, 9. 9 times 9 is 81. So I know that each side needs to be 9 meters. Because if I did 9 times 9, I would get an area of 81. So if each side is 9, what's the perimeter? 9 plus 9 plus 9 plus 9 equals 36 meters. All right, you try this one here. And remember, use your calculator as a tool. All right, go ahead and hit pause if you're not done. So each side in this case would be 12 feet because 12 times 12 is 144. And then if I add up all of the sides, I would have 12 plus 12 plus 12 plus 12, which would give me 48, and that would be my perimeter. All right, next example. So here I have a rectangle, and it has a base of 9 inches and an area of 45 inches to the second power. But what is the height? So I'm going to use my formula, area equals base times height. I know my area is 45. I know my base is 9, but I don't know my height, so I'm going to leave the h. But if you look at that carefully, you now just have a one-step equation. So what you're going to do is box the variable, divide both sides by 9, this cancels, bring down your h, bring down your equals, 45 divided by 9 is 5, and so your height is 5 inches. So if this is 5 inches, then this is 5 inches. If this is 9 inches, this is 9 inches. What would your perimeter be? 9 plus 9 plus 5 plus 5. And that would be 28 inches. Let's take a look at another one. What is the height of a parallelogram if the area is 32 meters squared and the base is 8 meters? So again, you always start with the formula, area equals base times height. So our area is 32 and the base is 8, but we don't know the height. So we have a one-step equation. Box the variable, divide both sides by 8. This cancels, bring down our h, bring down the equals. 32 divided by 8 is 4. So the height is 4 meters. Now, what's the perimeter? Well, if this is 8 meters and this is 8 meters, but this is a parallelogram, so we know that the height is only inside. If this is 5 meters, this is 5 meters. So in this case, the perimeter is 8 plus 8 plus 5 plus 5. And so the perimeter will be 26 meters. We do not count the height in the perimeter. All right, we have 6 U-tries left. Let's go ahead and get through them. All right, go ahead and hit pause if you're not done. So here are the answers to the first two. So the first one is 30 feet to the second power. The second one is 180 feet to the second power. All right, let's do the next two. All right, the answers to the next two are up. So for the square, it's 196 inches squared because 14 times 14. Now for the next one, it's a one-step equation. So your area was 60 yards squared and your width was 4 yards. So it's 60 equals 4b, and then, or 4x, you could use x if you wanted to, but you have to divide by 4 on both sides so that you get 15. All right, and then your last two. All right, and then here are the last two. So for the first one, you have to find what number multiplied times itself would be 256. So that would be 16 meters. And then what would be the perimeter of that? So 16 plus 16 plus 16 plus 16, and that would be 64 meters. And then here we have a parallelogram. The base is 5 units. The height, remember, from the highest point to the lowest point is also 5 units. So 5 times 5 would be 25 units. All right, that is the end of this lesson. We will do a lot more practice in class.